Hey, what's up, Los Angeles? Welcome back to the Ram Skinny here on the LAFB network. We are Los Angeles Sports. Apologize for a little brief hiatus. We didn't get to our preview episode of the Rams Seahawks game. I was doing some traveling. I was up in the Pacific Northwest, beautiful place. Unfortunately, didn't get to make the Rams Seahawks game, but I was up there. And then with traveling, it just didn't work for us to record. But we're back to talk about that thrilling overtime win, 26-20, and as of this recording, the trade deadline just passed. The Rams did make one move. Whether it was good or bad, we'll talk about that and kind of what it means setting up for the rest of the season. So kind of a combo, talk about the game, but also look at the trade deadline and look forward as the Rams move on and look much better placed to make a run at the playoffs. But first and foremost, Mr. Skinny T running the show. What's up, man? How we doing?
I'm doing good. So much news and fast and furiousness happening in the morning up until 1:00 Pacific time. And now we got the rest of the day. There's nothing going on November 5th, 2024 that is news or noteworthy. So yeah, we just get to enjoy the rest of the day.
Yeah. Just another Tuesday in November, just another day. No, with that being said, I'm going to try to get this episode up before the day's over. So everyone make sure to go out and vote. I absolutely hate politics. However, I am always honored to vote. It's a right as a U.S. citizen, and I think there's a lot of power in it. And for me, I honestly, I don't want to say care less, but I'm not even really caring about the presidential election, but there's a lot of local stuff that actually really affects us. I know there's a lot of education stuff on the ballot for right here in, my Pasadena and LA County, now that I have a kid in school. So for those of you that hate politics like me, and I'm sure you do too, Skinny, but and definitely don't enjoy these presidential candidates, we'll just leave it at that. But there is a lot of local stuff that is worth actual voicing and voting for that you could that could actually affect your everyday life. So make sure, go out and vote. It's really easy here in California. Easier than the DMV, I think. Easier than just about everything, I think, to vote. So make that happen. Make your voice heard. But did you want to? I don't know if you wanted to add anything on that.
Yeah. Two quick things on that. So the last election, the voter turnout was 66%, and so when you break that down, it's about a third of the people that are making decisions about. And this isn't just about the last election or who was not elected in that, but. Let's get that percentage up. If you're frustrated with anything in the country or locally, go vote. You can make your voice heard, and it does matter, even though sometimes it doesn't feel like it. And one of the things I'm really excited about being beyond this, among a lot of other things, is those political commercials during football games. I find so maddening, from both sides. I'm not trying to get partisan either way, but just like having to be subjected to some pretty insane commercials. I was watching a Nebraska local feed of the UCLA Nebraska game. Politics are much different in my home state of Nebraska, I have to say.
Oh yeah. I mean, politics in general and this will be the last time we talk politics, but I think back to the first election I voted in was 2008, John McCain against Barack Obama. And it just obviously there's still some nastiness even back then, but much more respectful and tasteful back then than where we're at now in this. And it's just, crazy. So that's why I say I care more about this local stuff that actually can affect my everyday life. Cause I mean, I think we've seen over the last 3 months that there actually is an acting president, and we haven't heard about him in 3 months. So I think there's more power in the local stuff than who's the figurehead up top. But anyway, neither here nor there. Get out and vote. Make your voice heard. NFL trade deadline passes, but first, let's talk about this 26-20 thrilling victory. It was a very up and down roller coaster game for the Rams, and this game and this podcast, as always, brought to you by BetOnline. Head to betonline.ag today. You can vote on the election if you want. Still a few hours to get that in, but I prefer to stick to voting to football or betting on football. All that can be done at betonline.ag, where the game starts. As always, I put you on the spot, Skinny. Just give me your overall take on this game. I mean, like I said, it was a roller coaster. There were some moments where the Rams looked dominant, and then especially at the end of that first half when things got flipped on its head and, a 13-point swing or whatever it was, and things looked pretty bleak and grim. What was your overall perspective of this win?
Yeah, this I think was a really good litmus test. I think these two teams were really evenly matched. I know, some projections were kind of splitting it right down the middle. I think that the Rams went in as underdogs. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. But I think these two teams are actually quite good tests for one another, and that's what led to the thrilling outcome. You got Seattle's terrible offensive line going up against this defensive pass rush that's really coming into its own, and that was a perfect storm that created all sorts of havoc. You're looking at PFF here. We got 29 created pressures. Jared Verse and Kobie Turner leading the way with 7 apiece. Braden Fisk with 5. You gotta love that. But they're going up against the Seattle Seahawks third string left tackle, I think it was, or right tackle, one of the two. Mm-hmm. So that's what you got to do when you go up against a bad unit. You got to dominate. So that's really encouraging to see. The passing game, at times looked like its old self. And when you got an old man at quarterback, he just wants to get home. He doesn't want to stick around for a long overtime. So he just ended it, a couple of plays and hit Demarcus Robinson. And Demarcus Robinson, this is amazing. That's incredible. What a game for that guy.
Yeah.
So those are my positive takeaways. I got plenty on the negative side for all of those people that like the fair and balancedness of our approach to this. We'll hit that, but I think you got to chalk up a win as a win. Back to 4-4, within the playoff hunt. So I think in terms of what we were thinking of this season, it's starting to materialize. This is looking like a 10-win team again.
Yeah. I think well said there. And Matthew Stafford, I didn't even realize this going into the game, but he is now 5-0 against the Seahawks as a member of the Rams. Obviously hasn't played in every game that he's been here because of injury. But in the ones he hasn't lost to the Seahawks team. So 5-0. The 12th man, the Hawks Nest, whatever you call it up there at Lumen Field, that's a tough place to play. So regardless of the ups and downs, which we'll get to, and some of the negatives, I mean, a big road win against a divisional opponent that now you take a lead in over the division. So hats off, finishing. I think that's what we've talked about, how they can finish games. We've talked about that about other LA teams, specifically the U.S. Trojans, who also were in the Pacific Northwest and were unable to finish just across the way against the Washington Huskies. That's a different conversation. Rams were able to finish in overtime. Got maybe a little bit of, I don't want to say luck, interesting for Seattle to go for it on fourth, but the Rams would have still got the ball back and they scored a touchdown. So it didn't really matter. But would that have swung momentum in any different ways if they would have just kicked the field goal and taken the 3? But yeah, I think this team is showing signs of, like you said, what we saw. The offense is still a bit up and down. They won 26-20, but one of those was a 103-yard interception return for a touchdown by Cameron Kinchins, the rookie. 2 interceptions for the rookie, which is great to see. But, so really only 20 points from this offense, which, I think Seattle, with their injuries and with this new instilled defense with Mike McDonald, I mean, it's a good defensive unit overall. I don't have in front of me their overall statistics. You might know better than me. But it's a good defense, a much improved defense. And so 20 points is not like something to just like slouch about. But, I think the offense just showed some ups and downs. Little bit of seeing Stafford go back to that targeting Cooper Kupp on everything, but at least he did find, like you said, Demarcus Robinson in critical moments. 2 touchdowns for D-Rob, obviously the one in overtime. He ended up with 6 total receptions, but you had Kupp with 11, D-Rob with 6, Tyler Johnson with 3, and no one else had more than 1. Now, there were 5 other players with at least 1 catch. So did spread the ball around in terms of the amount of players touching it, but it was a very heavy Cooper Kupp, which, hey, he's one of the best receivers in football. So when he's healthy, can't fault him on that. And then the last thing I'll say, because you kind of touched on it already on defense, but pretty weak ejection for Puka Nacua. Got thrown out at the end of the first half there for a thrown punch. Was it a punch? Was it more of a slight shove towards the head? I think Rams fans would say a shove. I think Seahawks fans would say a shove or a punch. I say I don't think that was worthy of an ejection. I get it. a punch is if you deem it as a punch, it's an automatic ejection. But anyway, luckily it didn't cost the Rams. They were able to get the win. But yeah, I mean, they made it out healthy, right? I think that's almost the win is the most important thing. The second most important thing, well, actually not, because Rob Havenstein did go down, another injury. Is there an update on that, actually? I know you wrote about it.
Yeah, there has been. Also Josh Wallace, who had been starting at nickel corner, also went down as well. I cannot remember. I'll keep thinking on the Havenstein thing. It'll come back to me at some point exactly what was said, but the Havenstein thing was that he's not going on the IR. That's the big news, and there's a chance that he's going to miss. Here it is. It's all coming back to me now.
Yeah.
He's going to miss the Dolphins game. Likely to miss. Probably will. Doubtful. He probably won't play. So nothing long term. So that's the good news there. We will eventually see the intended starting five at some point.
Maybe
in the season. Maybe not. Don't count your chickens before they hatch. But the Josh Wallace one is actually a bit more concerning. And the big news in the trade deadline is they moved on from Tre'Davious White, which was expected. It wasn't nothing surprising there. He's been a healthy scratch for the last 4 weeks since Darius Williams came back. There's some strangeness there, but he's gone, which reveals some serious depth. And getting to the negative side of things, they let up some incredible explosive passes. This defense did. We saw several of them going to Jackson Smith and Jigba, but several big chunk gains of 20 or more yards. And the secondary is just not able to cap that. And we were talking about it offline. They're headed to play Dolphins on Monday Night Football, where they've got guys like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Devon Achane, who are explosive play creators. So that's my big negative takeaway is, the depth at the secondary now is at a place where they are relying heavily on the 31-year-old Darius Williams. They're relying on Akhello Witherspoon, has definitely lost a step, who isn't great against explosive passes. And then that question at what you want to do at nickel corner now with Josh Wallace, who's carted off the field. No updates on him yet. Those are the only guys you got. Behind him, you got Cam Lampkin and Sean Jolly on the practice squad, and you have also undrafted rookie Charles Woods there as well. And that's your cornerbacks right there. And the pass rush has been awesome, but you saw Geno Smith be able to carve it up a little bit. And that's going forward a week, which we'll get into more. Tua Tagovailoa is great at punishing blitzers and tough pass rushes. So it's a big question going forward.
Yeah, well, and it's worth mentioning because I don't want to turn a positive into a negative, but it's just when you look at sustainability of the turnovers, it's not, you play to get turnovers. Those are game-changing plays, and those are why this defense, I think, has, held up really well in terms of the scoreboard, is they've been extremely opportunistic in the turnover category. I mean, Geno Smith, 3 interceptions in this one, and the obviously one of those returned pick 6 in the Raiders game, lots of turnovers. And so they've done really well in that. And it reminds me, not to bring it back to USC, but obviously both these teams play in LA. We cover both. It reminds me of the 2022 USC team, because that defense under Alex Grinch was not a good defense. But they were phenomenal in the turnover category. And so it hit a lot of those deficiencies that year, where those kind of came out in the Pac-12 championship game and in the Cotton Bowl against Tulane, because they didn't have those turnovers. But early on in the season against Oregon State, some of these other Notre Dame, these other games that they were able to pull away from, and you look like, 3 interceptions, 2 fumble recoveries, those are, I'm not saying those are just flukes, but you really can't rely on those as your kind of defensive mantra, because there's some points when the turnovers just kind of dry up a little bit. Like, yes, you can do things in terms of scheme, in terms of, different blitz packages and pressure rates and different disguises to obviously inflict more pressure to elicit turnovers. But depending on the quarterbacks you're playing and depending on the running backs you're playing, like, they're just not going to happen as frequently. And so those, I think, have masked some of the deficiencies, because, as you mentioned, the big gash plays. I mean, the Seahawks outgained the Rams over 420 total yards. Geno had 360 yards passing, or whatever it was. So, again, not trying to turn a positive into a negative, but those are just things that, you can't rely on getting 3 to 4 turnovers a game, and still winning in overtime. If you're getting 3 to 4 turnovers a game, you should probably be winning by 3 touchdowns. And then it's like, okay, well, yeah, you can't rely on the turnovers, but they turned all those into touchdowns and they won by 3 touchdowns. But like, you needed those 3 just to get into overtime and win in overtime. That's where some of those things need to be cleaned up against, I don't want to say better teams, because I think the Seahawks are very evenly matched. They're a playoff contender. It was a road game. And so all good. I'm not saying those are bad, but those are, don't be surprised if those turnovers dry up and things get exposed a little bit more. That's all.
Yeah, and I think, speaking to the secondary even more, is I don't feel like a lot of those turnovers were created by stealthy play in the secondary. The one in the red zone, Braden Fisk was the one that caused the Geno Smith's pass to lose power and basically drop it in the bucket for that 103-yard return, which, I mean, that's incredible as well. I just could not believe that.
Yeah, longest of the year so far.
The longest, I think, in Rams history as well.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you look at those 3 turnovers, you look at a lot of mistakes. They lost, the Seattle Seahawks lost 44 yards on missed snaps that just flew past Geno Smith. The Seahawks were trying to give this game away a lot of times, and to hop over onto the offensive side of things, not one of the best Stafford games. Obviously, has the heroics at the last part, but it's starting to look like he needs everything to be in place. Everything needs to be just right for him to look phenomenal. And not everything was just right in this one. You got Puka Nacua going out early on a very silly call. Keep your hands to yourself, I think is the takeaway there. Then you won't have that problem. And then you look at the Seattle Seahawks pass rush was really kind of exposed our guy Dedich there. 4 allowed pressures there. No sacks coming away from the game, so that's great. But Stafford's mobility is also kind of concerning going down the stretch when they face some of these teams with stouter pass rushes. He's been one of the most hit quarterbacks. Now, he's a big dude that can shake off defenders, but he has 0 scrambles this year. So yeah. He's never been that real mobile guy, but it's really, his arm hasn't gone away. His ability to, duck a defender here or there hasn't gone away, but the scramble ability has gone down to 0.
Yeah. Statue, if you will.
Yeah.
Happy feet statue. He's like he's a little more mobile than Peyton Manning was at the end of his career, I think. We'll give him that. We'll give him that benefit of the doubt. Had that beautiful evade from Minnesota on Thursday night a while back. So that was,
and another one against Seattle too.
Yeah, another one against Seattle. So he can still do that, but yeah, and the run game wasn't able to totally get going. With only, I think, 3.1 yards for carry for Kyren on 22 carries, yeah. But at least they stuck with it. 22 carries, they almost got to that 25-30 threshold, which I always pound the table for. So that's decent to see at least. And like I said, it was good to see Demarcus Robinson, step up in Puka's absence and really some clutch plays there down the stretch, especially in the end zone twice. So my wife has him on her fantasy team in the last 2 weeks, has really helped her out.
Okay.
She has no idea who it is, but I told her to start him and it's worked out, I guess, for her. But speaking of the trade deadline, you mentioned it. Tre'Davious White traded to Baltimore for his 2026 seventh. I was thinking it's so funny when it's like 2 or 3 years down the line at that late of a pick. So basically paid him $3 million to play 4 games. man, I wish I could get that kind of paycheck. How nice would that be?
I wouldn't
$3
turn it
million
down.
to play 4 games, and not well, by the way. Give up what, 4 touchdowns?
Yeah. The joke I always make about making money is I can't guarantee that I'm not going to be a problem in this world. But if you want me to not be a problem, just give me a couple $1 million and I'll go away.
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
promise anything.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds great to me. So yeah, traded that. So that brings us up to this, and we can kind of roll with this till we end the show, is the depth of this team. So don't trade for anyone. There was thoughts of maybe, obviously 2 weeks ago it was like, oh man, is Cooper Kupp going to be gone? Is Matthew Stafford going to be gone? Obviously when they beat Minnesota, that was unlikely. And then for sure when they beat Seattle, it was like, okay, they're definitely not selling. But would they go buy? Would they be buyers? Would they go get another big name, whether it's receiver, O-line, or corner? Marshawn Lattimore was on the block, and he ends up going to the Commanders for a pretty hefty price. What was it, a third and a fourth?
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically what they traded for Von Miller in the Super Bowl years. I think they gave a second and a third actually for Von, but so pretty high price. But Lattimore goes out there. There was a few other potential corners on the block, some other maybe receivers just add depth, and end up holding pat. So before I kind of get into my thing, I get that this team now has won 2 in a row. I get that they're getting healthier, but do you think it was a mistake to not go get someone, not even a star necessarily, but at least a depth piece? Do you think they should have gone and traded for someone, or you're happy with them kind of just staying pat?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of positions that you definitely have to look at that they probably should have added. We've already touched on it. Cornerback, you've got Darius Williams, you've got Cobie Durant, and you've got Quentin Lake, who can play some nickel. Akhello Witherspoon and Charles Woods, Cam Lampkin, Sean Jolly. Like, I'm not inspired by this group. And I like the pass rush, and obviously they can affect the game. But when that isn't hitting like that, when you're not going up against maybe the worst offensive line in football, what is that going to look like for the secondary? And when you go up against a quarterback that's a bit more mobile than Geno Smith, it can create a little bit more time for himself. What is that going to look like come playoff time? Because defense wins championships, and they're going to be facing off against teams like the Eagles and the Lions, and if they are able to make the playoffs. And so that's going to be a huge question going down the stretch there. Another one that I'm thinking right now is running back as well. Blake Corum has played here and there. If Kyren Williams were to go down with an injury, is he ready to step into that position? A lot of speculation there, that counts on a lot. But another one is tight end, and this might be my new hobby horse, I guess.
Yeah,
Colby Parkinson is not working out as a viable Tyler Higbee fill-in, and Higbee hasn't looked great over the last couple of years. He's been fine. He's been, I would say good enough. Is he going to look better coming off of a MCL and ACL tear? Seattle did a fantastic job basically taking the tight ends completely out of this game anyway. So, it's that's another question that I would say is, is that a missed opportunity to kind of pad that either with, a name like David Njoku was floated out there. I didn't hear a lot of talk about tight ends moving. I don't think any of them ended up moving. But that's definitely another question. And I would say this was your last time to try to get something out of Tutu Atwell in the form of a late round pick, to send him off to a team where they know what to do with him, because it's quite obvious that either he doesn't know what he's doing in the McVay offense, or McVay doesn't know what to do with Tutu Atwell in the offense.
Yeah.
And so that experiment is over. We've been over it, and that was their last chance. And maybe they were shopping him. And maybe everybody was like 5'8". Yeah, no, we're good.
We're good. You got Skinny T's number on the line? Like, we can have him coming for a tryout. Why not? I'll work backwards. Yeah. I'll work backwards to forwards to backwards. I don't know. I'll start with tight end, because I agree. This was I think a potential opportunity. There's not like there's not 7 Travis. I know he's having it down here, but there's not like a tree of Travis Kelce's out there, and the Rams just don't have one of them. Like there's legitimately like maybe 5 elite tight ends in the game today, but there are other pass catching tight ends out there that can play a role. Like they didn't, I don't think they needed to trade for a 3-down tight end, but if you have a guy that can maybe in 3rd down or red zone situations give you an opportunity, it was worth it. One name we kind of talked about, and there's a huge injury risk factor because he literally has not been able to stay healthy since being drafted. But Greg Dulcich with the Broncos has now been healthy and been a healthy scratch by the Broncos, the tight end out of UCLA. And we know his skill set is as a pass catcher. So if Colby Parkinson is seen as a traditional run blocking, pass blocking tight end, Dulcich is kind of your more like XYZ receiving tight end type that can chip and help here and there, but he's not like known for his blocking. But if he can come in on 10 snaps a game in red zone or 3rd down opportunity and stretch the field for you, they could have probably gotten him for real cheap and potentially added him. So again, injury risk is a factor, but if we know the Rams, we know they like trading for injury prone players. So why not? They're going to draft or sign or trade for injury guys that have had injuries and hopefully get him on the cheap because of that. So that was one opportunity I think they could have added there. I don't need to add more to what you said about the secondary. I mean, that's obvious. The depth there is definitely a concern down the stretch. I think what, I don't know what adjective or descriptive word I want to use, but when looking at this team and this roster, again, we're on the same page. Like they're trending up. They're looking like the team we thought they were going to be. They're now 4-4. They have everything in front of them. Absolutely right now. I think they right now with everything that's coming back can be a playoff team. Should be a playoff team, especially with how the division's shaking down. The only thing that I think they left on the table on this trade deadline is that they're kind of now banking on everyone that's been hurt to come back fully healthy and remain fully healthy. And that is like, to me, a big risk when just last week, Puka Nacua comes back and then guess what? Leaves practice with a apparent knee injury. Now he ended up being okay. But that's just a foreshadow of like the dude played one game and then left practice with an injury again. Like who's to say Steve Avila or Jonah Jackson come back, play a game and then get hurt again. And then you're like in the same boat. Who's to say the tight end position ever gets more formalized, or who's to say you don't lose another big star, whether it's Cooper Kupp, I need to be just knocking on wood everywhere, Kyren Williams, Matthew Stafford, whatever. And so I think there was opportunity to, if you're not going to go after a premier guy, if you're not going to go after a Marshawn Lattimore because you don't want to give up that much in the secondary, not going to go after a David Njoku, who I think Cleveland ended up being pretty steadfast that they were not going to move him. But had they been, it would have cost a pretty penny. I think you could have at least gone after some like good, valuable depth pieces just in case in 6 weeks, because they had an early bye. I mean, they got a lot of football still ahead and a lot of opportunity, unfortunately, for guys to go down. And we don't want to, you never want to plan for injuries, but you also don't want to just pretend they're not going to happen, because then if they do, and this team, let's say, is at 6-4, 7-5, 8-5, and all of a sudden you lose someone and you lose the season because you have no depth, that's where it's like, man, they could have maybe solved that by adding a piece or two at this deadline.
Yeah, and just to speak to like kind of injury prone players, Darius Williams had missed 4 games to start the season. Again, going to the cornerback room. Josh Wallace, as I said, is now out. We don't know what's up with him. Akhello Witherspoon last year was dealing with a knee injury all year. There's a reason he wasn't signed in free agency back in March. There's a reason he was still available just last month. There's a reason that he wasn't on the field when he had initially been signed. So, I mean, that's just that group, which is just terrifying. Then you go down, Alaric Jackson started the season with an injury. Rob Havenstein, injury prone now. Matthew Stafford, always one hit away, as tough as he is. Kyren Williams, always been thought of as an injury risk. Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, both now looking, Kupp especially looking feeble. I'm not ready to call him cooked, but he's not the player he once was a few years ago. I'm comfortable saying that. and the big question is how's the Rams front office viewing this year? Is it kind of like what they were thinking last year, where are we just gonna run this year through and see how much good vibes we can create throughout, and how much we can celebrate, pat ourselves on the back for drafting a couple of good defensive linemen over the last couple of years, or are they all in trying to maximize what's left of Matthew Stafford? Is he got 2 more years in him for when this team fully comes together? And as we've discussed several times, there's no plan. There's no heir apparent to the quarterback position for the Rams. I mean, I don't want to get too far out and too doom and gloom, just because all that's unpredictable. But what does this year mean to this team? Are they thinking, hey, if we just get our foot in the door, we got a 4-game stretch in the playoffs where we can see ourselves back in the Super Bowl? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, what did Cam Robinson go for from the Jags to the Vikings? Do you remember what his trade value package was? Just, what was it, 2 days ago?
Was it just 2 days ago? It seems like an eternity ago.
Let's see.
I don't recall.
Well, here, you maybe look for it while I'm talking. I don't remember but I'm bringing that up because the Rams went all in on offense. They basically, without saying it, did a rebuild on defense and said, we're just going to go young. And as long as we can play competitive, get after the quarterback and stay in games, the offense is what's going to win it for us. They went all in. They have one of the highest expensive offenses in all of football.
The most expensive offense.
Thank you. The most expensive. So knowing that, and with that being the kind of philosophy of what this 2024 iteration of the Rams is, seeing all of the injuries, but knowing that is what is required to win and get to the Super Bowl, you don't ever not then remain all in on the offense. And so to me, then they should have gone all in at the trade deadline and said, okay, let's assess where we're at. And, obviously Avila and Jackson are going to come back on the offensive line. But again, who knows how healthy they will remain. Like, if it's me, I'm going after another offensive lineman, adding to that, maybe another receiver, because if Kupp and Nacua do not remain healthy, we know how that offense completely falls off. And so I'm not necessarily throwing names, and I brought up Cam Robinson, and obviously the Vikings absolutely needed him because Christian Darrisaw goes down there starting left tackle. But now the Rams are without Rob Havenstein for potentially another week, 2, 3, who knows for sure. So they're without a tackle, and starting Warren McClendon on that side. So to me, if that's the group you're all in on, you can't just keep playing musical chairs and hoping it can get you to where you want to go. If your mindset was all in on the offense, you've got to remain all in on the offense and not just hope everyone gets healthy at the right time. If that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And the Jacksonville Jaguars got a 2026 conditional 5th round pick for Cam Robinson and a conditional 2026 conditional 7th round pick. So basically a pick swap for him. So
it's like, why not? I would have done that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
I will say, as we're recording, your favorite player, Joe Noteboom, just came off the IR. So Noteboom may be available against the Dolphins, which I would assume he'll start probably at actual right tackle, right? Maybe.
The most recent press conference, McVay said they're not sure whether they'll go Havenstein or McClendon. And I think it kind of depends on who's available to play the left guard position, because Noteboom has played there in the past.
Yeah.
He's played just about everything but center. He has played everything but center, but has a bit more experience at left guard. And that's actually where I like him the best, is as a guard.
Yeah,
but
I think we both agree.
I mean, he's also been bad at that position as well. He's been okay at several positions and bad at all of them as well. So I don't love it. Luckily Miami's pass rush isn't firing on all cylinders right now, so won't be as much of an issue. But yeah, I mean, when going back to Les Snead's thought process is he's always thinking in bets, right?
Yeah.
And he's betting a lot, everything on the health of Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, essentially. I don't know if, and I said this last year, and it's always going to come back to haunt me. Are they just a Kyren Williams away from this offense turning everything around? Apparently, that was true last year. This year, are they just a couple of linemen away from Matthew Stafford? Matthew Stafford looked so bad when he was just throwing to Tyler Johnson and Demarcus Robinson, and he had a tough time when it was just Kupp in the lineup as well. So, I mean,
yeah. I mean,
we're in a weird spot, even though things are trending really well and the vibes are really good. There are a couple of injuries away from this thing, like, again, falling all apart, and injuries, as you've been saying, they don't just have this trajectory where everything just keeps getting better as the days move on and as people get healthy. People get hurt. But we're not betting on that, and back to 4-4. So
yeah,
get my head out of the gutter.
yeah. And on the positive side, like, this offensive line did give up 0 sacks against the Seahawks, 18 pressures. So a lot of pressures there, but no actual sacks. So credit to them for holding their own. And then Stafford, obviously, not taking any sacks and getting rid of it. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see. I'm not like down on this team by any means. Obviously, that was a huge win, back-to-back wins against 2 very good football teams, one of them being on the road. I would have just liked to see them maybe do something to hedge their bet, if you will. Hedge less needs bet going down the stretch, because it's a long season still. You got 2 full months plus a week in January of just basically doing this, that everyone stays healthy. And it didn't happen last week. I mean, 2 guys just went out again. So we shall see. We shall see. Anything else you want to add now that the trade deadline's over?
10 games left, guys. 10 games still left to be played before the playoffs start. We're at week 9. I feel like we should be like halfway through.
Yeah.
And we're not.
Yeah.
So
you're right. No, I mean, great. I love it. It's 10 games. It's still a lot of football to talk about and watch. So that's exciting, but yeah, a lot to get through. So, but hey, huge win, back to 4-4. It's great. Aren't technically the Cardinals leading the division right now?
Yeah. Yeah. With a blowout of whichever team they played.
Yeah. The Bears. The Bears have been a very weird team this year. Like, they look good some weeks and just awful other weeks. Which I know.
And the Cardinals added Baron Browning from your hometown Broncos team.
Yeah, they sure did. Who's a lot of talent. He is injured, but they got him for like a 6th-round pick. So again, that just shows, I think the Rams could have gotten someone like that for pretty cheap, just to add some assurance on either side of the ball. But we won't harp on it anymore. The deadline's over. It's time.
Done.
Yeah, exactly. So we can look forward to that. But hey, very much alive, sitting at, the whole NFC West is going to be wild down the stretch. Arizona at 5-4, Rams 4-4, Niners 4-4, and Seahawks 4-5. It is going to be an intense down these final 10 games. Let me ask you this real quick, because this I think is fascinating. Obviously, these numbers don't mean a lot because you get blown out one game, it throws it. But what do you think the Rams' net points are? Meaning points for versus points against.
I just saw it, and I want to say it's like -6,
-24.
Oh, dang! Well, every game has been close except for the blowout against Arizona, which was a 24 point.
That was probably
a 24 point win.
Yeah. Yeah, something like that. So you have Arizona is actually who's winning the division. They have a -7 net points. The Niners, who are in 3rd, have a positive 28 net points. Seahawks -11 in last, and the Rams at -24. So that just I don't think that's a very hugely credible stat, just because obviously 1 or 2 games can change that a ton. But what would you guess is how do I phrase this? The most negative net points in the NFL.
I got to point towards the Panthers on that one. I'm going to say under 80.
Well done. You're right on the Panthers. -146.
Wow. Wow.
Who just beat the Saints, who was only -22.
It's such a weird year. I mean, I legitimately think for the first time in probably 5 years or so, any team can win any good team, any playoff team can win the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah. I totally agree. I mean, it's so bizarre. I mean, the Saints remember the Saints and the Cowboys were both 2-0 to start the year, and everyone's like,
and the Seahawks.
Yeah. And the Seahawks, and it's like, wow, these are three of the best. Like the Saints were blowing people out, or maybe the Saints blew out the Cowboys after the Cowboys were 1-0. But yeah, the Saints were 2-0. Like they looked dominant again. It was back to the glory days of the offense, and they haven't won since. They've lost 7 straight.
Fired their coach. Crazy. So in Rams land, it's much better than that. But anyway, anything else to add, or are we good to? Have we recorded since the Dodgers won the World Series?
I don't know if we have actually.
I don't think we have. Go Dodgers.
Yeah. Go Dodgers. Big world champs, Los Angeles Dodgers. We cover them now at LAFBnetwork.com. So make sure to follow all of our Dodgers content. But
Lakers are off to a good start.
Lakers, Clippers had a 26-point come from behind win last night. First win at Intuit Dome. They were 0-4, so finally got that home win on that $2 billion stadium.
How are the Kings doing?
Kings are off to a pretty good start.
Good, right on.
Yeah, love me some Kings hockey. So, just love hockey. So we'll get hockey coverage here very soon once we have the bodies, the manpower. So thank you all for tuning in. This is the Rams Skinny here in the LAFB network. If you have not already subscribed to our YouTube channel at Rams LAFB, please hit that like and subscribe. It helps us out. You can find all of our content at LAFBnetwork.com, including editorial and social content. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, just search Rams Skinny and you can subscribe to us there. For Skinny T, I'm Ryan Darragh. Thank you as always, Ramley, for hanging out. We'll be back here in a couple days to preview this Dolphins game coming up, which before the season started, looked like it was going to be an electric game. The Dolphins have been a very odd team, obviously, partially due to missing Tua Tagovailoa for most of the year, but he is back. So that offense looks like it will be getting back on track. So we'll have a lot to talk about heading into that game. Everyone be well, be safe. Go out and vote. Talk to you all very soon.